Hi, this is Lord of Leaks. James Gunn has finally released the first trailer for the next major project of the rebooted DC universe. The new take on Supergirl, played by Millie Alcock, already sparked heated debates among fans after her appearance in Superman. Back then, however, it was only a brief cameo. Now we're looking at a full, standalone story about a heroine who hasn't had her own solo film in nearly 40 years. What comic book references can be spotted in the trailer? What parts of the original story have already been cut? And most importantly, what role will Lobo play in all of this? We'll cover everything over the next few minutes. To start with, it's worth saying that James Gunn stays true to himself. His signature style clearly runs through the rebirth of DC. Even though Supergirl is directed by Craig Gillespie, Gunn's influence is still very noticeable in the tone and overall approach. Gillespie may not be the most talked-about director, but his track record speaks for itself. He's behind Cruella, I, Tonya, and the series Friends and Neighbors. And if you think you haven't seen his latest work, chances are you actually have. That viral clip of John Hamm dancing in a nightclub came straight from that show. As for Supergirl itself, the film is based on the comic of the same name, subtitled Woman of Tomorrow. Originally, the movie was meant to keep that full title, but during development, the subtitle was dropped, leaving just Supergirl. That choice makes sense, because judging by the trailer, the film doesn't adapt the comic page by page. Instead, it uses the source material as a foundation, introduces new characters, and will clearly rework the ending. Let's break everything down step by step, starting with the comic that inspired the film. It's easy to see why James Gunn chose this particular story. First of all, it explores Supergirl's past without turning into a full-blown origin story. What happened to Krypton, why Kara became who she is, and why she didn't arrive on Earth like Superman, all of this is revealed naturally as the plot moves forward. The audience doesn't need any prior knowledge to follow the story. The comic is completely self-contained and works perfectly on its own. It's undeniably dramatic, but across 8 issues, it takes just a single flashback and a few conversations to convey Supergirl's backstory and inner struggle. As a result, we get a clear understanding of the character, her lifestyle, and her worldview without excessive exposition. In broad terms, everyone already knows the fate of Krypton, and even the recent Superman avoided diving too deeply into Kal-El's origins. Realizing that viewers likely wouldn't want to revisit yet another detailed tale of a planetary destruction, Gunn and Gillespie opted for a more efficient approach, introducing the new heroine through her journey and actions. At the same time, Krypton's story isn't ignored. The trailer includes several scenes that highlight the tragedy of Superman's homeworld. During the cataclysm, Superman's father, Zor-El, managed to create a protective dome around the city of Argo City, separating it from the planet and saving thousands of lives. However, this new reality didn't last long. The surface of Krypton's remnants was contaminated, leading to widespread deaths from radiation poisoning. In other words, through the flashbacks we've already glimpsed in the trailer, we will still see the ultimate fate of the Kryptonians. Secondly, the comic itself, at times, strongly echoes Guardians of the Galaxy. It's an intergalactic adventure filled with aliens, spaceships, bizarre creatures, and even dinosaurs. On paper, that might sound like a risky choice for a film adaptation, but that's exactly where James Gunn comes in. When Gunn first joined Marvel to make Guardians, it felt like almost no one believed in the project's potential, except him and Kevin Feige. While the Avengers were made up of a billionaire genius, a super soldier, a god of thunder, and a green powerhouse, a talking raccoon and a walking tree seemed completely out of place. Yet the result was one of the most vibrant and beloved trilogies, packed with charismatic characters and an iconic soundtrack. From the very first scene of Quill walking with his music player, Gunn made it clear that this would be a fun, energetic ride, one audiences would happily revisit again and again. The Supergirl comic is, in terms of tone, much closer to Guardians than to DC's traditionally darker atmosphere, and that's exactly what makes it stand out. Gunn understands better than almost anyone how to present this kind of format, even if he isn't the one sitting in the director's chair. Thirdly, the story is told from an unusual perspective. Although Kara Zor-El plays a central role, the narrative doesn't revolve solely around her. Instead, much of the story is filtered through her companion, Ruthie, a naive girl who lacks even basic knowledge, down to something as simple as washing her hands with soap. Many of the story beats are built around this contrast. Just as Guardians had Drax and Mantis embodying childlike innocence, Supergirl assigns that role to Ruthie. Because of this, the similarities between the Marvel and DC projects become noticeable almost immediately. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If storytelling and directing techniques that clearly work are carried over from one project to another, the audience benefits. The studio doesn't even seem to be hiding these parallels. Just look at the first official poster, where Kara is wearing a music player that looks strikingly similar to Peter Quill's. It feels like a deliberate hint at a shared tone and storytelling style, something the trailer only reinforces. The film opens with a scene where a song accidentally starts playing on an old device, setting the mood for everything that follows. At the same time, a dog casually relieves itself on a newspaper, a visual metaphor that perfectly captures how society views Kara. The bold headline reads that Superman saves a city from a nuclear reactor meltdown, while a tiny note in the corner mentions that Supergirl saved some cats. Kal-El is portrayed as a hero dealing with world-changing threats, while Kara is framed as someone worthy of a small neighborhood column. This contrast becomes the foundation of the entire story. Supergirl is clearly stuck in a state of self-destruction and doesn't see herself as a true hero. That's where the drinking comes from, as well as her decision to fly to a bar and celebrate her birthday completely alone. Superman was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents. Kara, on the other hand, spent the first 14 years of her life surviving on the remnants of Krypton. It doesn't take much imagination to understand what she witnessed growing up: death, loss, and constant suffering. As a result, Kara is far more hardened and emotionally scarred than Kal-El. Superman himself will also appear in the film. This was confirmed at a recent Comic-Con in Brazil, where Millie Alcock revealed that she filmed a scene with him and that they spoke Kryptonian during the exchange. Naturally, Superman's role is expected to be brief, likely limited to a cameo. The trailer also shows that Kara has been aged up slightly, by about 2 years. In the comic, she was celebrating her 21st birthday. The narrative focus has shifted as well. The source material begins with a murder and follows Ruthie's quest for revenge, with Kara getting involved almost by chance. In the film, however, Supergirl is placed front and center from the very beginning, and the story follows her journey directly. That said, the trailer makes it clear that the core storyline still closely mirrors the comic. Without spoiling anything, the motivation for hunting down the main antagonist, Krem, remains the same. One clear hint is the scene where a devastated Kara gently comforts a visibly injured Krypto. Overall, the trailer is packed with moments that directly echo the original story. In one brief shot, we see Kara screaming in the vacuum of space. This strongly resembles a scene from the comic where Kara and Ruthie travel aboard a space ferry and encounter a dragon that consumes metal. In that moment, Supergirl takes red kryptonite to boost her powers and defeats the creature in open space. It sounds incredibly ambitious, which makes it hard to believe the scene survived into the final script. The film clearly leans heavily into cosmic storytelling, but a space dragon takes it to an entirely new level. With this approach, it wouldn't be surprising to see the magical storyline from the comic make its way into the film as well. Now let's talk about Lobo, played by Jason Momoa. His casting was announced a year ago, and honestly, it feels spot on. While many still associate Momoa with Aquaman, his take on Lobo seems like a near-perfect match. There were concerns about how the makeup would turn out, but his appearance in the trailer looks promising so far.
It's a shame he only shows up for a couple of seconds, because we still have no clear idea what Lobo's role is going to be. He wasn't in the original comic at all, so his presence automatically means we're getting a brand new story thread. It feels like DC simply decided not to wait any longer and rushed to bring the character to the big screen after years of maybe later. What's especially interesting is that Tom King, the writer of the source material, once said he originally wanted Lobo in the story as Kara's companion on this journey. So there's a real chance the film's script is built on those early ideas. He probably won't change the core plot, but it makes sense that he'll travel with Kara for at least part of the movie and add both energy and chaos along the way. And of course, we have to talk about the soundtrack. Music is basically its own language in anything that has James Gunn's fingerprints on it. The trailer uses Call Me by Blondie, a track released back in 1980 that spent a long time at the top of the charts. It perfectly captures Kara's rebellious edge, sets the tone instantly, and fits the action beats incredibly well. That said, it's hard to shake the feeling that in at least half of these action shots, Kara looks like she's fighting something that resembles the parademons in terms of movement, rhythm, and overall vibe. Maybe it's just a visual association, but the resemblance is definitely there. More broadly, it's important to remember what the Supergirl comic actually is, a very personal story emotionally, but one that still manages to span multiple planets and expand the scale of the galaxy in a big way. And judging by this first trailer, the adaptation doesn't seem interested in shrinking it down into a small, safe story. It looks like it wants to keep that larger scope.
The big question is how far DC is willing to go with the weird cosmic side of things. Will the film fully embrace the magic elements, the space dragons, the edge of the galaxy insanity? Or is the new cinematic universe not ready to lean that hard into the wild stuff yet? And one more thing, the ending will almost certainly need changes. In the comic, the finale jumps roughly 10 years forward. The current timeline probably can't afford a move like that, so the writers will have to find another way to make it work. How would you solve it? Drop your ideas in the comments. And while you're at it, what did you think of the Supergirl trailer overall? How do you feel about Millie Alcock in the role? And what's your take on Lobo's look and vibe? That's it for me. The next leak is already on the way.